That summer, my mother would come into my room every morning and leave the help wanted section of the newspaper on my bed, or on me, still lying in bed. She had circled possible jobs in red marker. I dragged myself to the Youth Employment Service and applied for the first job that sounded okay, painting the Olympic-sized swimming pool at Badger Sports Club. I showed up at 8 one morning to meet Willie, an old black man wearing overalls, pork pie hat, a cigar stub stuck in the corner of his mouth. He looked me up and down, stopping at my long hair, then took off his sunglasses and looked me over again. He spat without taking the cigar out of his mouth. "We got to get the leaves out," Willie said, handing me a rake. Empty, the pool looked immense, a blue rectangular void. The leaves in the deep end were wet and slimy. I slipped and fell on my ass at one point. Willie just looked at me, then turned away. After we raked out the leaves, we mopped the entire pool. Then he told me to mop it again. When I finished, I asked, "Are we ready to paint now?" Willie snorted. "First, we got to get the pitch out of them seams," spitting some nicotine-stained saliva too close to my foot. He squatted on an overturned 5-gallon can, lined up a long chisel, and hit it with his hammer. The tar shattered like black glass. Then Willie handed me a bucket with a hammer and chisel, work gloves, and goggles inside. He watched me hold the chisel at an angle and hit the seam. It shattered, spraying me with obsidian shards. "Not so hard, keep them goggles on." For the next 2 weeks, we inched along, a few feet apart, the pitch exploding under the blows of our hammers. As the day wore on, I would strip down to my t-shirt. By the end of the first week, a rash broke out on my arms and neck. The skin turned brown and began to peel off from the bits of pitch hitting my exposed flesh. "If you keep that up, you'll be black as me," Willie said, shaking his head. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You seen me, didn't you?" he said, holding up his arms, long sleeves tucked into his gloves, his shirt buttoned all the way up to the neck. As the spring grew warmer, the tar became a soft, sticky mass. We'd cut into it along the edges and pry out gummy wedges of black taffy until we cleared it all out. "Tomorrow we pour the pitch," Willie said, lighting his cigar stub. He told me I'd be carrying the molten tar from the parking lot to the pool. He would use metal watering cans with the tops taken off to fill the seams. When we finished pouring one, he expected me to be there with a full can. It was a hot day, the metal cans full of tar, heavy and scorching, even with the thick gloves I wore. It went on like that all day. The next morning, we took long poles with rollers attached and started to apply the thick blue paint. By mid-afternoon, we were in full sun. As we rolled out the paint, thin membranes like cobwebs peeled off the rollers and rose up in the heat, gossamer webs of pale blue floating just above our heads. I was captivated, wanting to see how high they would rise before falling into themselves in twisted ropes or disappearing into the sun. When we finished, we were both spent. Willie fell asleep under a big oak tree, the cigar still stuck in his mouth. I sat on the edge of the shallow end, gazing out at the pool, a glimmering oblong of sunlit turquoise that seemed to levitate out of the ground.